Lolo Enki TV.
The Law of One, Book 3, Session 53. May 25, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the One Infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner, I would first like to ask what is the instrument's condition and then ask 2 questions for her. She would like to know if she can now do 1 exercise period per day, and also is the pain she feels prior to doing a session due to an Orion attack? Ra, I am Ra. The instrument's condition is as previously stated. In answer to the question of exercise, now that the intensive period is over, this instrument may, if it chooses, exercise 1 period rather than 2. In scanning this instrument's physical complex distortions, we find the current period of exercise at the limit of this instrument's strength. This is well in the long run due to a cumulative building up of the vital energies. In the short run, it is wearying to this entity. Thus we suggest the entity be aware of our previous admonitions regarding other aids to appropriate bodily distortions. In answer to the second query, we may say that the physical complex difficulties prior to contact with our social memory complex are due to the action of the subconscious will of the instrument. This will is extremely strong and requires the mind-body-spirit complex to reserve all available physical and vital energies for the contact. Thus the discomforts are experienced due to the dramatic distortion towards physical weakness while this energy is diverted. The entity is, it may be noted, also under psychic attack, and this intensifies pre-existing conditions and is responsible for the cramping and the dizziness as well as mind complex distortions. Questioner, thank you. I would like to know if, name, may attend one of these sessions in the very near future? Ra, I am Ra. The mind-body-spirit complex, name, belongs with this group in the spirit and is welcome. You may request that special meditative periods be set aside until the entity sits with this working. We might suggest that a photograph of the one known as name be sent to this entity with his writing upon it indicating love and light. This held while meditating will bring the entity into peaceful harmony with each of you so that there be no extraneous waste of energy while greetings are exchanged between 2 entities, both of whom have a distortion towards solitude and shyness, as you would call it. The same might be done with a photograph of the entity. Name, for the one known as name. Questioner, thank you. During my trip to Laramie, certain things became apparent to me with respect to dissemination of the first book of the Law of One to those who have had experiences with UFOs and other wanderers. And I will have to ask some questions now that I may have to include in Book 1 to eliminate a misunderstanding that I am perceiving as a possibility in Book 1. Therefore, these questions, although for the most part transient, are aimed at eliminating certain distortions with respect to the understanding of the material in Book 1. I hope that I am using the correct approach here. You may not be able to answer some of them, but that's all right. We'll just go on to others then if you can't answer the ones I ask. Can you tell me of the various techniques used by the service to others positively oriented Confederation contacts with the people of this planet, the various forms and techniques of making contact? Ra, I am Ra. We could. Questioner, would you do this please? Ra, I am Ra. The most efficient mode of contact is that which you experience at this space-time. The infringement upon free will is greatly undesired. Therefore, those entities which are wanderers upon your plane of illusion will be the only subjects for the thought projections which make up the so-called close encounters and meetings between positively oriented social memory complexes and wanderers. Questioner, could you give me an example of one of these meetings between a social memory complex and a wanderer as to what the wanderer would experience? Ra, I am Ra. One such example of which you are familiar is that of the one known as Morris. 1. In this case, the previous contact which other entities in this entity's circle of friends experienced was negatively oriented. However, you will recall that the entity, Morris, was impervious to this contact and could not see, with the physical optical apparatus, this contact. However, the inner voice alerted the one known as Morris to go by itself to another place, and there an entity with the thought form, shape and appearance of the other contact appeared and gazed at this entity, thus awakening in it the desire to seek the truth of this occurrence and of the experiences of its incarnation in general. 1. This refers to case number 1 in Secrets of the UFO by D. T. Elkins with Carla L. Ruckert, Louisville, Kentucky, LL Research, 1976, p. 10-11. The feeling of being awakened or activated is the goal of this type of contact. The duration and imagery used varies depending upon the subconscious expectations of the wanderer which is experiencing this opportunity for activation. Questioner: in a close encounter by a confederation type of craft, I am assuming that this close encounter is with a thought form type of craft. Have wanderers within the past few years had close encounters with landed thought form type of craft? Ra: I am Ra. This has occurred, although it is much less common than the Orion type of so-called close encounter. We may note that in a universe of unending unity the concept of a close encounter is humorous, for are not all encounters of a nature of self with self? Therefore, how can any encounter be less than very, very close? Questioner: well, talking about this type of encounter of self to self, have any wanderers of a positive polarization ever had a so-called close encounter with the Orion or negatively oriented polarization? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: why does this occur? Ra: I am Ra. When it occurs, it is quite rare and occurs either due to the Orion entity's lack of perception of the depth of positivity to be encountered or due to the Orion entity's desire to, shall we say, attempt to remove this positivity from this plane of existence. Orion tactics normally are those which choose the simple distortions of mind which indicate less mental and spiritual complex activity. Questioner: I have become aware of a very large variation in the contact with individuals. Could you give me general examples of the methods used by the Confederation to awaken or partially awaken the wanderers they contact? Ra: I am Ra. The methods used to awaken wanderers are varied. The center of each approach is the entrance into the conscious and subconscious in such a way as to avoid causing fear and to maximize the potential for an understandable subjective experience which has meaning for the entity. Many such occur in sleep, others in the midst of many activities during the waking hours. The approach is flexible and does not necessarily include the close encounter syndrome, as you are aware. Questioner: what about the physical examination syndrome? How does that relate to wanderers and Confederation and Orion contacts? Ra: I am Ra. The subconscious expectations of entities cause the nature and detail of thought form experience offered by Confederation thought form entities. Thus, if a wanderer expects a physical examination, it will perforce be experienced with as little distortion towards alarm or discomfort as is allowable by the nature of the expectations of the subconscious distortions of the wanderer. Questioner: well, are those who are taken on both Confederation and Orion craft then experiencing a seeming physical examination? Ra: I am Ra. Your query indicates incorrect thinking. The Orion group uses the physical examination as a means of terrifying the individual and causing it to feel the feelings of an advanced second density being such as a laboratory animal. The sexual experiences of some are a subtype of this experience. The intent is to demonstrate the control of the Orion entities over the Terran inhabitant. The thought form experiences are subjective and, for the most part, do not occur in this density. Questioner: well, we have a large spectrum of entities on Earth with respect to harvestability, both positively oriented and negatively oriented. Would the Orion group target and on the ends of this spectrum, both positively and negatively oriented, for contact with Earth entities? Ra: I am Ra. This query is somewhat difficult to accurately answer. However, we shall attempt to do so. The most typical approach of Orion entities is to choose what you might call the weaker-minded entity that it might suggest a greater amount of Orion philosophy to be disseminated. Some few Orion entities are called by more highly polarized negative entities of your space-time nexus. In this case, they share information just as we are now doing. However, this is a risk for the Orion entities due to the frequency with which the harvestable negative planetary entities then attempt to bid in order the Orion contact just as these entities bid planetary negative contacts. The resulting struggle for mastery, if lost, is damaging to the polarity of the Orion group. Similarly, a mistaken Orion contact with highly polarized positive entities can wreak havoc with Orion troops unless these crusaders are able to depolarize the entity mistakenly contacted. This occurrence is almost unheard of. Therefore, the Orion group prefers to make physical contact only with the weaker-minded entity. Questioner: then in general we could say that if an individual has a close encounter with a UFO or any other type experience that seems to be UFO-related, he must look to the heart of the encounter and the effect upon him to determine whether it was Orion or Confederation contact. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. If there is fear and doom, the contact was quite likely of a negative nature. If the result is hope, friendly feelings, and the awakening of a positive feeling of purposeful service to others, the marks of Confederation contact are evident. Questioner: thank you. I did not wish to create the wrong impression with the material that we are including in Book 1. I may find it necessary to add some of this material. As I say, I know that it is transient, but I believe it is necessary for a full understanding or, shall I say, a correct approach to the material. I'll ask a few questions here, but if you do not care to answer them, we'll save them. I would like to ask, however, if you can tell me what, for the most part, the Confederation entities look like? Ra, I am Ra. The fourth density Confederation entity looks variously depending upon the, shall we say, derivation of its physical vehicle. Questioner, do some of them look just like us? Could they pass for Earth people? Ra, I am Ra. Those of this nature are most often fifth density. Questioner, I assume that the same answer would apply to the Orion group. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Is there any other query of a brief nature we may answer? Questioner, I apologize for asking many transient questions during this session. I felt it necessary to include some of this material so that those wanderers and others reading the first book of the Law of One would not get the wrong impression with respect to their experiences in contacts. I am sorry for any problems that I might have caused. I will just ask if there is anything that we can do to aid the contact or to aid the instrument. Ra, I am Ra. The instrument is well. Please guard your alignments carefully. We leave you now, my friends, in the love and in the light of the One Infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the Infinite Creator. Adonai. The Law of One, Book 3, Session 54. May 29, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the One Infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner, I would like to trace the energy that I assume comes from the Logos. I will make a statement and let you correct me and expand on my concept. From the Logos comes all frequencies of radiation of light. These frequencies of radiation make up all of the densities of experience that are created by that Logos. I am assuming that the planetary system of our Sun, in all of its densities, is the total of the experience created by our Sun as a Logos. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, I am assuming that the different frequencies are separated, as we have said, into the 7 colors, and I am assuming that each of these colors may be the basic frequency for a sub-logos of our Sun Logos, and that a sub-logos, or, shall we say, an individual may activate any one of these basic frequencies or colors and use the body that is generated from the activation of the frequency or color. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. If we grasp your query correctly, this is not correct in that the sub-logos resides, not in dimensionalities, but only in co-creators, or mind-body-spirit complexes. Questioner, what I meant was that a mind-body-spirit complex can then have any body activated that is one of the 7 rays. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct in the same sense as it is correct to state that anyone may play a complex instrument which develops an euphonious harmonic vibration complex such as your piano and can play this so well that it might offer concerts to the public. As you would say. In other words, although it is true that each true color vehicle is available potentially, there is skill and discipline needed in order to avail the self of the more advanced or lighter vehicles. Questioner, I have made these statements to get to the basic question which I wish to ask. It is a difficult question to ask. We have, coming from the sub-logos we call our Sun, intelligent energy. This intelligent energy is somehow modulated or distorted so that it ends up as a mind-body-spirit complex with certain distortions of personality, which are necessary for the mind-body-spirit complex or mental portion of that complex to undistort in order to conform once more with the original intelligent energy. First, I want to know if my statement on that is correct, and, secondly, I want to know why this is the way that it is and if there is any answer other than the first distortion of the Law of One for this. Ra, I am Ra. This statement is substantially correct. If you will penetrate the nature of the first distortion in its application of self-knowing self, you may begin to distinguish the hallmark of an infinite creator, variety. Were there no potentials for misunderstanding and, therefore, understanding, there would be no experience. Questioner, okay. Once a mind-body-spirit complex becomes aware of this process, it then decides that in order to have the full abilities of the creator, it is necessary to reharmonize its thinking with the original creative thought and precise vibration or frequency of vibration. In order to do this, it is necessary to discipline the personality so that it precisely conforms to the original thought, and this is broken into 7 areas of discipline, each corresponding to one of the colors of the spectrum. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This statement, though correct, bears great potential for being misunderstood. The precision with which each energy center matches the original thought lies not in the systematic placement of each energy nexus but rather in the fluid and plastic placement of the balanced blending of these energy centers in such a way that intelligent energy is able to channel itself with minimal distortion. The mind-body-spirit complex is not a machine. It is rather what you might call a tone poem. Questioner: do all mind-body-spirit complexes in the entire creation have 7 energy centers? Ra: I am Ra. These energy centers are in potential and macrocosm from the beginning of creation by the Logos. Coming out of timelessness, all is prepared. This is so of the infinite creation. Questioner: then I will assume that the Creator in its intelligent appraisal of the ways of knowing itself, created the concept of the 7 areas of knowing. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is partially incorrect. The Logos creates light. The nature of this light thus creates the nature of the catalytic and energetic levels of experience in the creation. Thus it is that the highest of all honor duties, that given to those of the next octave, is the supervision of light in its manifestations during the experiential times, if you will, of your cycles. Questioner: I will make another statement. The mind-body-spirit complex may choose, because of the first distortion, the mental configuration that is sufficiently displaced from the configuration of the intelligent energy in a particular frequency or color of in-streaming energy so as to block a portion of in-streaming energy in that particular frequency or color. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. Yes. Questioner: can you give me an idea of the maximum percentage of this energy it is possible to block in any one color? Ra: I am Ra. There may be, in an entity's pattern of in-streaming energy, a complete blockage in any energy or color, a combination of energies or colors. Questioner: okay. Then I assume that the first distortion is the motivator or what allows this blockage. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. We wish no quibbling but prefer to avoid the use of terms such as the verb, to allow. Free will does not allow, nor would predetermination disallow, experiential distortions. Rather, the law of confusion offers a free reach for the energies of each mind-body-spirit complex. The verb, to allow, would be considered pejorative in that it suggests a polarity between right and wrong or allowed and not allowed. This may seem a minuscule point. However, to our best way of thinking it bears some weight. Questioner: thank you. It bears weight to my own way of thinking also. I appreciate what you have told me. Now, I would like to then consider the origin of catalyst. First we have the condition of mind-body-spirit complex which, as a function of the first distortion, has reached a condition of blockage or partial blockage of one or more energy centers. I will assume that catalyst is necessary only if there is at least partial blockage of one energy center. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. No. Questioner: could you tell me why? Ra: I am Ra. While it is a primary priority to activate or unblock each energy center, it is also a primary priority at that point to begin to refine the balances between the energies so that each tone of the chord of total vibratory beingness resonates in clarity, tune, and harmony with each other energy. This balancing, tuning, and harmonizing of the self is most central to the more advanced or adept mind-body-spirit complex. Each energy may be activated without the beauty that is possible through the disciplines and appreciations of personal energies or what you might call the deeper personality or soul identity. Questioner: let me make an analogy that I have just thought of. A 7-stringed musical instrument may be played by deflecting each string a full deflection and releasing it, producing notes. Instead of producing the notes this way, the individual creative personality could deflect each string the proper amount in the proper sequence, producing music. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. In the balanced individual, the energies lie waiting for the hand of the Creator to pluck harmony. Questioner: I would like then to trace the evolution of catalyst upon the mind-body-spirit complexes and how it comes into use and is fully used to create this tuning. I assume that the sub-logos that formed our tiny part of the creation using the intelligence of the logos of which it is a part, provides the base catalyst that will act upon mind-body complexes and mind-body-spirit complexes before they have reached a state of development where they can begin to program their own catalyst. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is partially correct. The sub-logos offers the catalyst at the lower levels of energy, the first triad. These have to do with the survival of the physical complex. The higher centers gain catalyst from the biases of the mind-body-spirit complex itself in response to all random and directed experiences. Thus the less developed entity will perceive the catalyst about it in terms of survival of the physical complex with the distortions which are preferred. The more conscious entity being conscious of the catalytic process will begin to transform the catalyst offered by the sublogos into catalyst which may act upon the higher energy nexi. Thus the sublogos can offer only a basic skeleton, shall we say, of catalyst. The muscles and flesh having to do with the, shall we say, survival of wisdom, love, compassion, and service are brought about by the action of the mind-body-spirit complex on basic catalyst so as to create a more complex catalyst which may in turn be used to form distortions within these higher energy centers. The more advanced the entity, the more tenuous the connection between the sublogos and the perceived catalyst until, finally, all catalyst is chosen, generated, and manufactured by the self, for the self. Questioner: which entities incarnate at this time on this planet would be in that category of manufacturing all of their catalyst? Ra: I am Ra. We find your query indeterminate but can respond that the number of those which have mastered outer catalyst completely is quite small. Most of those harvestable at this space-time nexus have partial control over the outer illusion and are using the outer catalyst to work upon some bias which is not yet in balance. Questioner: in the case of service to self-polarization, what type of catalyst would entities following this path program when they reach the level of programming their own catalyst? Ra: I am Ra. The negatively oriented entity will program for maximal separation from and control over all those things and conscious entities which it perceives as being other than the self. Questioner: a positively oriented entity may select a certain narrow path of thinking and activities during an incarnation and program conditions that would create physical pain if this were not followed. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: would a negatively oriented entity do anything like this? Could you give me an example? Ra: I am Ra. A negatively oriented individual mind-body-spirit complex will ordinarily program for wealth, ease of existence, and the utmost opportunity for power. Thus many negative entities burst with the physical complex distortion you call health. However, a negatively oriented entity may choose a painful condition in order to improve the distortion toward the so-called negative emotive mentations such as anger, hatred, and frustration. Such an entity may use an entire incarnative experience honing a blunt edge of hatred or anger so that it may polarize more towards the negative or separated pole. Questioner: prior to incarnation, as an entity becomes more aware of the process of evolution and has selected a path whether it be positive or negative, at some point the entity becomes aware of what it wants to do with respect to unblocking and balancing its energy centers. At that point it is able to program for the life experience those catalytic experiences that will aid it in its process of unblocking and balancing. Is that correct? Ra: I am Ra. That is correct. Questioner: the purpose then, of what we call the incarnate physical state, seems to be wholly or almost wholly that of experiencing the programmed catalyst and then evolving as a function of that catalyst. Is that correct? Ra: I am Ra. We shall restate for clarity the purpose of incarnative existence is evolution of mind, body, and spirit. In order to do this it is not strictly necessary to have catalyst. However, without catalyst the desire to evolve and the faith in the process do not normally manifest and thus evolution occurs not. Therefore, catalyst is programmed and the program is designed for the mind-body-spirit complex for its unique requirements. Thus it is desirable that a mind-body-spirit complex be aware of and hearken to the voice of its experiential catalyst, gleaning from it that which it incarnated to glean. Questioner: then it seems that those upon the positive path as opposed to those on the negative path would have precisely the reciprocal objective in the first three rays, red, orange, and yellow. Each path would be attempting to utilize the rays in precisely the opposite manners. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. It is partially and even substantially correct. There is an energy in each of the centers needed to keep the mind-body-spirit complex, which is the vehicle for experience, in correct conformation and composition. Both negative and positive entities do well to reserve this small portion of each center for the maintenance of the integrity of the mind-body-spirit complex. After this point, however, it is correct that the negative will use the three lower centers for separation from and control over others by sexual means, by personal assertion, and by action in your societies. Contrariwise, the positively oriented entity will be transmuting strong red ray sexual energy into green ray energy transfers and radiation in blue and indigo and will be similarly transmuting selfhood and place in society into energy transfer situations in which the entity may merge with and serve others and then, finally, radiate unto others without expecting any transfer in return. Questioner, can you describe the energy that enters these energy centers? Can you describe its path from its origin, its form, and its effect? I don't know if this is possible. Ra, I am Ra. This is partially possible. Questioner, would you please do that? Ra, the origin of all energy is the action of free will upon love. The nature of all energy is light. The means of its ingress into the mind-body-spirit complex is twofold. Firstly, there is the inner light which is Polaris of the self, the guiding star. This is the birthright and true nature of all entities. This energy dwells within. The second point of ingress is the polar opposite of the North Star, shall we say, and may be seen, if you wish to use the physical body as an analog for the magnetic field, as coming through the feet from the earth and through the lower point of the spine. This point of ingress of the universal light energy is undifferentiated until it begins its filtering process through the energy centers. The requirements of each center and the efficiency with which the individual has learned to tap into the inner light determine the nature of the use made by the entity of these instreamings. Questioner, does experiential catalyst follow the same path? This may be a dumb question. Ra, I am Ra. This is not a pointless question, for catalyst and the requirements or distortions of the energy centers are two concepts linked as tightly as two strands of rope. Questioner, you mentioned in an earlier session that the experiential catalyst was first experienced by the South Pole and appraised with respect to its survival value. That's why I asked the question. Would you expand on this concept? Ra, I am Ra. We have addressed the filtering process by which incoming energies are pulled upwards according to the distortions of each energy center and the strength of will or desire emanating from the awareness of inner light. If we may be more specific, please query with specificity. Questioner, I'll make this statement which may be somewhat distorted and then let you correct it. We have, coming through the feet and base of the spine, the total energy that the mind-body-spirit complex will receive in the way of what we call light. Each energy center then filters out and uses a portion of this energy, red through violet. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is largely correct. The exceptions are as follows. The energy ingress ends with indigo. The violet ray is a thermometer or indicator of the whole. Questioner, as this energy is absorbed by the energy centers at some point it is not only absorbed into the being but radiates through the energy center outwardly. I believe this begins at the blue center and also occurs in the indigo and violet. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. Firstly, we would state that we had not finished answering the previous query and may thus answer both in part by stating that in the fully activated entity, only that small portion of in-streaming light needed to tune the energy center is used. The great remainder being free to be channeled and attracted upwards. To answer your second question more fully, we may say that it is correct that radiation without the necessity of response begins with blue ray, although the green ray, being the great transitional ray, must be given all careful consideration. For until transfer of energy of all types has been experienced and mastered to a great extent, there will be blockages in the blue and indigo radiations. Again, the violet emanation is, in this context, a resource from which, through indigo, intelligent infinity may be contacted. The radiation thereof will not be violet ray but rather green, blue, or indigo depending upon the nature of the type of intelligence which infinity has brought through into discernible energy. The green ray type of radiation in this case is the healing, the blue ray the communication and inspiration, the indigo that energy of the adept which has its place in faith. Questioner, what if a mind-body-spirit complex feels a feeling in meditation at the indigo center? What is he feeling? Ra, I am Ra. This will be the last full query of this working. One who feels this activation is one experiencing in streaming set that energy center to be used either for the unblocking of this center, for its tuning to match the harmonics of its other energy centers, or to activate the gateway to intelligent infinity. We cannot be specific for each of these three workings as experienced by the entity which feels this physical complex distortion. Is there a brief query before we leave this instrument? Questioner, I just would ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Ra, I am Ra. Please be aware of the need for the support of the instrument's neck. All is well. I leave you, my friends, in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.